Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Soccer Nation podcast. I'm your host, Kareem Rae. Today, I'm excited to be joined by a special guest, Dave Galas. Dave, thank you for being here. To kick things off, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kareem. Dave Galas, president of Sporting Cascades FC in Eugene, Oregon.
Amazing. So, just to share a quick backstory on how I connected was just a few months back, down in Spokane, Washington, at the USL Expansion Summit in person. Dave, I truly like meeting people first before I have them on the podcast, because most of the people I usually meet them virtually, but it's always nice to meet them in person in person first. So that's always nice. Um, but we were there viewing Spokane Stadium, but you got in a very, very exciting project coming up that we're going to be talking about. But before we dive in, my first famous question is, how did you get involved in the beautiful game?
Yeah, I- again, amazing stadium in Spokane, and I think that really sort of underlines, what needs to happen for soccer to be successful in this country, in all these different markets. Is it really is a stadium first type of project, and that's exactly how I got involved here in Eugene. Um, we had an old stadium, Civic Stadium, that was built in 1938. All the lumber, it was an all wood stadium. All the lumber was donated by the local timber companies. It was a real community project, and the Eugene Emeralds baseball team had played there for years. And they had, 15 years ago now or something, they moved out to move into the University of Oregon's fancy new baseball stadium. So we had this stadium that was sitting empty, and the community really loved the old park and wanted to keep it active. And there were a number of us in the community who thought there was no better use for it than soccer. So that was really the impetus for getting involved. My brother John, who's been a head coach at the USL one level, um, an assistant at the NWSL, has experience in Europe. He's been in soccer his whole professional life. So I gave him a call, and we started scheming on creating a team in what was then the PDL, with the idea that once we got the stadium, we would go pro, and go into what was then the USL Pro. But yeah, so we were able to raise money in the community and save the stadium from being torn down. And 3 weeks after we got the keys, 4 12-year-olds with matches burned it to the ground. So a little bit of a pivot, but yeah, that's really the was the impetus for starting the project, was putting a team in the old stadium.
Understood. And do you have a background in soccer? Did you play or any connection to soccer for you?
Huge fan of the game. Played all the way through high school. Probably should have played in college, but focused a little bit more on cross country. Um, but yeah, when we were kids, we moved to Europe and were just immediately immersed in the soccer culture. So it's been a lifelong love. Been a huge fan of the game, but no, didn't have any professional experience in working in the sport.
Understood. And like, how does it feel to you to have achieved such an amazing goal of being a part of club ownership, launching your own club in the market that you guys are in? How does that feel to you personally?
Um, I don't know that I have the time or space to have the luxury of that kind of reflection. Um, it's a grind, but I think at the end of the day, the reminders are certainly when people come up to you and tell you how much it means to them, and that's the part that really feels good. We set out to make it a community first club, and when the community responds that it's something that means a lot to them, to their family, etc. That's just that's a great reminder of why we're doing it. So I would say, you know leave it up to others to tell you how much it means to them, and that's how I'll feel about it. So that's always great to hear.
Nice. Truly a community asset. Um, you've mentioned the city. How inv- how was the interaction with the city? Was it a was the city on side to bring professional soccer to the market, or was there a little bit of convincing that had to be done, some work there to get full
Well,
support of the city?
yeah, we've been we've been able to get this far to be able to do this really without too much city help. The stadium was previously owned by the school board. Excuse me, and the city did get involved in terms of being the liaison in the purchase process. So the city literally bought it from the school board and owned it for 30 seconds, I think, before it was turned over to the Eugene Civic Alliance, who ended up buying the stadium. But beyond that, it's really been a community project to rebuild the facility. After the fire, we got some money from the state, but beyond that, it's been entirely private donations. So it's been a really, really incredible outpouring of support for the stadium project and the kids' sports facility. Um, and so, convincing the city that soccer was the right call was not really even necessary. It was convincing other people in the community who were donating their dollars to rebuild the stadium. Since then, however, the both mayors of Eugene and Springfield have been wildly supportive of it. And so I think we will have the opportunity to engage with the city more as we get closer to season, and then certainly in seasons going forward, and make sure that this is a sustainable project and has lasting potential in the community.
Absolutely. When do you guys kick off?
Um, March, beginning of March is the beginning of the USL one season.
Next year. No, that's super exciting. I've seen some pictures online of the stadium, and it looks beautiful. Um, how long did it take to rebuild the stadium?
Um, so the fire was 10 years ago. 10 years ago this last summer. So it was a pivot. Originally, our intention was to start the team. We were gonna have to do a little bit of work on the stadium to get it up to snuff and get it ready, and then we were gonna go pro, and then we were gonna focus on building the kids sports building. And after the fire, that got flipped on its head, and we ended up building the kids sports building first. So that opened 5 years ago, I think. And yeah, we just finished the stadium portion, sort of phase two, if you will, last year, beginning of last year. And so we played Lynn United, our USL League Two and W League teams played there last season, but it's been a long process.
Yeah. Sorry, you said what was phase one? A training facility?
So kids sports
Yes.
is it's an organization that's been around under different names for over 70 years in our community. They serve something like 15,000 kids a year in all kinds of different sports. And with the with PE programs, after school programs, et cetera, at schools getting cut, kids sports is one of the organizations that's really picking up the slack there. And so they've never had their own facility, so it was a great opportunity to build them. So it's an indoor field house, if you will, with four middle school sized basketball courts, but it's multi-use and the whole community uses it. So that became phase one, and then we focused on the stadium portion after that.
Got it. So are those is that building close to the stadium?
Yeah, it's on the same piece of property.
Got it. So so mixed use develop. I mean, would that be considered mixed use development?
I wouldn't say so, because it is just a sports facility, for kids, and I mean during the day it's used by the rest of the public. But no, it doesn't have any of those other, traditional entertainment restaurant, hotel, etc. type of amenities that you see in what would now be called a mixed use development.
Got it. And I just want to come back to the acquisition of the stadium to just understand because I'm just so used, I'm so programmed in regards to the whole like mixed use development and acquiring the land, like that type of acquisition. Having the city's involvement and state involvement. So this one's a bit different for me. What I'm used to. I want to get a better understanding here too. So and sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself here, but you said that you guys had purchased um the stadium. It was an old stadium you guys had purchased through the school.
Yep. So it I don't know exactly how that came to pass over the years, but it was owned by the school district, and once the Emeralds moved out, it was deemed surplus to requirement for them, so they were going to get rid of it. And big box store wanted to move in and tear it down, and so some prominent people in the community banded together and started passing the hat, and we raised about just over $4 million in 6 months, and we're able to buy it. Like I said, with the city stepping in as sort of the interim purchasers, but all private donations.
Got it. So the question is that I'm interested to know, was it an easy acquisition of purchase, or was there a bit of work? I mean, because I know these projects, man, they take time. They're long. It's a tall
Yeah.
task. So yeah, I mean, if you would like to share, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it was definitely a bit contentious, because the big box store had made their plans very clear, and there were certainly some people in the community that just wanted to tear the old stadium down. They thought it was an eyesore, and they were looking to, get another retail amenity in the area. But I think for the most part, the community overall wanted it to be restored and wanted to save it. Um, and we had done, and it did look a little bit shabby, to be fair, but we had done a proper audit of the grandstand, and it was deemed to be 95% structurally sound. So there wasn't a ton that was going to have to be done to it, to keep it structurally sound, at least, or to bring it up to snuff, that way. Certainly, there were a lot of cosmetic things to do, but it was worth restoring, and I think a lot of the community responded to that call, and certainly did with their wallets, because we raised that money in 6 months and were able to buy it.
How many investors?
Oh, I have no idea. It was, I mean, there were donations, and we had, you know, people who were donating $5, $10 to, people who were writing six-figure checks. So it was a ton of people who put money in. There was famously a friend of mine, his kid was, I think, 7 at the time, and he was foregoing birthday parties to have fundraisers among his kids, and so he brought his jar of donations, at the signing of the deed, and handed over a jar with 200 and something dollars to the mayor.
That's a pretty cool story. I mean, that's very memorable. To see that, a young man had wanted to was so excited to pull together funds from family and friends to put towards the club and want to see this club come to life. I mean, and bring it to the mayor. So that's massive. I mean, it just shows the support, and how much the community wants professional soccer in their market. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, in regards, was there could you share a little bit of the structure of how that was raised? Was it through a crowdfunding platform, or did you guys just set something up? Like, how did that come together?
No, it was literally just, start an organization, start an LLC, I think it was, and set up a website. Get a few of these. nonprofit um, software platforms. So mailing lists and just start taking donations. There would be calls that would come in from people who said, "Hey, I want to donate, but I can't leave my house. I'm elderly, whatever." So we had people going out and picking up $20 checks around town, just anything.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, Dave, this is super unique. Just in regards to the process of having the community support and how you guys have went about bringing this club to life. Again, just from what I'm used to. Um, Aside from that, is this like the way you guys have come together to launch this club and have the community support? Is your story unique, or are there other clubs that have launched in USL One or Championship that have gone the same pathway you guys have gone?
I would say, every story is unique. If you dig in enough. I don't know that I've heard a story like ours in terms of saving the stadium with just community dollars. But beyond that, I think certainly this year in the USL one, with 3 new teams coming in among the 7 expansion teams that are moving up from USL two. We're certainly not unique on that front. Um, so I think it's all we're all facing a lot of the same challenges. I think the unique part of our story is really the stadium piece. But um, you know, I know that you give communities the opportunity to show their support for projects like this, and all around the country they step up. We're seeing it all over. So I don't think it's necessarily unique, other than just the sort of acquisition process for the stadium component.
Understood. Are you able to share the number, if you'd like, or if you can, the cost of the stadium?
Um, so the overall project, including the kids sports field house, was, I believe, right around $50 million. It started a little while ago. It certainly would have been higher if all the construction was done today. But like I said, um, the field house component was finished about 5 years ago. But yeah, the whole project was about 50 million.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. Um, Switching gears here, you've mentioned early surveys showed overwhelming support for promotion or relegation. What did those surveys reveal about your core segments? Casual fans versus diehards, and price sensitivity and the size of your year one addressable fan base.
Yeah, I mean, it's an online survey, so you have to take the responses with a grain of salt, in that the demographic that's answering it is the demographic who's willing to take the time and fill out a survey about soccer. So they're already invested. We weren't stopping the man on the street, so to speak, to ask questions about pro rel. But yeah, it was overwhelming support. I think we had, out of over 100 responses, I think we had 2 people that said they were against pro rel, and 2 people that said they didn't know what it was, and all the rest were in favor of it. Um, and I think what it really says about the soccer fan in this country today is that the hard part in bringing pro rel to this country has been done for us. The hardest thing is to educate your customer, your fan, your consumer, whatever it is in whatever industry, and that education piece has been done for us. Um, through mechanisms like Ted Lasso or Welcome to Wrexham, or just people watching European soccer on the weekends. They understand what it is, and I'm sure in your experience it's the same. When you explain promotion and relegation to someone who's never heard of it before, their first reaction is usually, "Oh my God, that would be so cool in this country. How come we don't have that here?" Um, it's just, I think people instantly recognize the excitement that it brings to a season. So yeah, I think it's great. There's a lot of support for it, and people understand it now. So here we go. Let's give it a shot.
Absolutely. As an outsider, I've heard in the past, USL internally, the ownership groups in the league have discussed pro rel for a while. And just recently, USL has announced publicly that pro rel, USL is bringing pro rel pushing for 2028. And I'm interested to learn, and if you can share, what kind of pushed that ball over the edge in regards to all USL 1 and championship owners to the majority vote for, hey, we want to bring pro rel to US, um, and make history in US soccer.
I think there's a couple things there. One, the view of USL One among championship teams, among championship owners, I think has changed in recent years, for the better. And so I think there's a lot of recognition that USL One is a quality league. It's, on a good sustainable path. It's a lot closer to being, championship level than maybe it was 3, 4 years ago. And I think that's a key piece. That championship teams before were maybe had the perception that getting relegated to USL One, you would just get lost in a crummy league. And so I think that's definitely changed. And the flip side of that, of course, is I think there's recognition that there are a few USL One teams that, with the right injection of capital, could make that move up to championship and actually compete. So that perception, sort of narrowing the gap in both the professionalism off the field from the operations of USL One and the competitiveness on the field, has definitely helped bridge that gap. But then I think the key component here is USL's announcement of launching a Div 1 league. Because if you launch Pro Rel just between Championship and USL One, you're just, it doesn't quite feel the same as it does around the world, where you have, an Ipswich or a Wrexham story where there are multiple promotions within, 2 years. So having 3 divisions that all have promotion and relegation, I think was the other missing piece. And so I think, yeah, now we're on the right path, and I think everyone's on board.
Yeah. Super exciting. The next question I wanted to ask you was, like, USL's leading the way with pro rel. How does what are your thoughts on, as a club owner, what do you think MLS will do, and what's their reaction going to be?
Um, I'm I'm not exactly sure what. I mean, they've publicly just stated that they don't like the idea of pro rel. They definitely believe more in the NFL model, if you will. So I don't know if they'll do anything. They stated that they're not interested, so I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I don't know that they will do anything, and if they do something, I don't know what they can do. I don't. I'd be shocked if they suggested they were going to adopt some form of promotion relegation.
Understood. From your seat, heading into or coming out of the Dallas meetings, what are the most consequential decisions on the table for USL's competition structure 2026 to 2030?
A lot of the discussion revolved around promotion and relegation, what that was going to look like. Getting the report from the sort of sporting commission, I think they were called, and just sort of looking at the structure of how it's going to work. And so, a ton of it depends on, expansion over the next couple years and what the leagues are going to look like at that point. So I think, most of the clubs are obviously very concerned with doing it the right way, coming out, making sure the look and feel of promotion and relegation, is correct in the eyes of the fans. making sure they understand it, making sure it seems fair, all those things. So it's no decisions were really made, but it's a ongoing discussion that obviously everyone feels is really important to get right over the next few years of planning.
Got it. What first principles should guide USL's rollout? Parachute payments, roster spend guardrails, expansion fee treatment, and timing? And also, how do you phase this to protect competitive integrity without destabilizing clubs?
All of the above. I think we have to consider all of those things because they're all real concerns. Fortunately, we're not inventing anything new here. So we can look to Europe um, and the rest of the world to see what's working, what's not working. And I think it'd be foolish to ignore all the experiments that are going on this front around the world. But with that, we also have to recognize that it's never been done in this country. It's going to be new to the fans in the States. And the other thing that makes this whole project unique is the size of our country. There's no other country that is doing this successfully with such a large footprint. So the prospect is you look at Europe and you say, oh, pro rel works like this in England. Well, England is a very small country relative to our own, and we have to look at it through the lens of, well, what we're really looking at is having fewer teams than they have in England, and having a promotion relegation system that covers the same geographic area as the Champions League does. So there are very real challenges, but at the end of the day, all those things you mentioned are really economic concerns, and all the money's in one pot, and it's you have to pay attention to all those factors that affect the bottom line. Um, but yeah, I would say I don't think there's any one area that is going to make it successful or unsuccessful. We just have to be very aware that the whole project is affected by all of those things.
Got it. Um, I'm interested in to know, like, what was the conversation like for groups that have paid the USL Championship franchise? I mean, depending on the year they got in, they're paying a substantial amount versus the USL one franchise. What was that like? And what's is there any cushion being provided to championship owners for you know for for voting yes? I mean, um, you know, what was that like?
I honestly can't tell you. I don't have that knowledge of what's going on in the championship. I think, as I mentioned before, um, I think championship owners are now looking at the prospect of relegation not as a punishment per se. I mean, in a lot of ways, there are cost savings just because of operating with lower minimum standards as set out by U.S. Soccer. Um, and you you know clubs can be very successful at the USL one level. Economically, we don't. There are clubs that have made that move, on their own without being relegated, who are still and maybe more sustainable financially. So I think there's just the fear of getting relegated isn't as substantial as it used to be, because I think the um, the evidence is there that you can operate sustainably at USL one, and your fans aren't all going to leave, and you also have some cost savings. So um, I can't answer your direct question, but I think there's a lot of reason for those fears to have been assuaged, mostly because of the expansion and the higher standards and by the clubs operating in USL one.
Yeah, understood. Switching gears here, Dave, for the young men and women and, for anyone else that wants to, is interested to get into club ownership, whether now or in the future, could you share some context of your background work wise, I mean, you've shared that your interest of soccer that you've played in high school, the work that you were doing previously, if you would like, and um, how you got into club ownership and why club ownership, as well as what is needed to be able to be in your position. What are some of the skills that people need to have and learn to get there as well? I'm interested to learn from myself as well, from you and anyone else listening.
Well, I think you just hit on it directly, is just that interest to learn. Um, I think in my experience, I come from sort of a I guess STEM background, you would say. Um, math and technology. Um, and I think, in my experience, I think you would find, if you start talking to owners, and presidents, etc., that a lot of them just get into it because they love the sport. For me, it was really just asking questions in the community, and how can I help? What can be done? What's happening here? And just seeing a need, and an opportunity to maybe jump in and change something. And I think, I consider some of my colleagues, mentors. Um, Ron Patel's doing an amazing job in New Mexico, and certainly on the club ownership side. I think it could be argued there are few better than Brett Johnson. Um, and I've known those guys for a long time and talked to them about all this kind of stuff pretty often. And without outing them publicly, you'll also find out that they're making it up as they go along too. Sometimes, you're just you figure it out. And the way you figure it out is by being observant and listening and asking questions, and just seeing where you can apply certain ideas, to your own project. And then also know that there's no silver bullet. What works in one market isn't necessarily going to work in another. But also being very open to what others are doing. Um, and beyond that, it's just work hard. It's a lot of hours, but you know, the love of the game, and like I said earlier, the community response to a project like this is, at the end of the day, makes it worth it.
Yeah. Both people you've mentioned, Brett Johnson and Ron Patel, I've had on the podcast. Uh, learned a lot from them and looking forward to learning a lot to continuing to learn from them and from you as well. Um, really inspirational to myself. I mean, I'm a soccer guy through and through. Everything I've done in my life so far has been soccer. So it's nice. And, you know, the question I was going to ask you, I mean, you mentioned countless hours, but those hours are, even when it's hard, still enjoyable because of the passion of the game that you have for it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know my wife isn't thrilled, when we have boxes of t-shirts and scarves in the guest room, but it's part of the process. And yeah, I think, like I said before, just a willingness to learn and to jump in and learn all aspects of the business. I mean, I'm in the position now where I am hiring, VPs and senior directors, etc. But after 10, 12 years, whatever it's been, starting Lane United up and doing, you know, a little bit of everything, even coaching at times, which didn't go so great. I feel like I'm in a position where I can actually I can conduct meaningful interviews, because, these guys may be experts in these areas, but I've also done it at a lower level, in all these different pieces of the business. So, and I think, at the end of the day, it's one of those things that is important, is that you understand every part of the business, and there's no better way to understand it than by doing it. So, yeah, if you can jump in and find some advisors, find some investors, etc., and just grind at that pre-professional level, you're definitely going to give yourself a lot of experience that's going to be invaluable as you move up through the pyramid.
Thank you for sharing. We're in Q4 right now, 4 more months to go, and March is coming up sooner than later. Um, you mentioned you guys are currently hiring right now. What did the next 4 months look like for you? Could you kind of paint a picture? You mentioned, hiring. What else is next?
Yeah, everything really kicks into high gear now. We've hired, all of our top people, VPs. John has started building the team. He has his staff all lined up, ready to go. So, yeah, we're about to announce our apparel partner next week. Have a little event for that, but then it's just really, on the marketing front, getting out in the community, being at every public event we can, get the street team activated. I think you'll see a big marketing push in the next few weeks, which will go, last that 6 months right up to season. And so, yeah, it's just kicking everything into high gear on all fronts, from marketing, partnerships, tickets, etc.
Amazing, exciting. And you guys just recently revealed the logo on the name. Um, Jersey coming soon. Um, Dave, we got to get one of those. We got to get a scarf. We got to get a jersey put in the back here, man.
No problem.
For sure. I'm collecting. I'm telling everyone I'm collecting. The most
Excellent. Good to
recent
know.
one we got was this one right here I got it from Gabe.
Beautiful.
So yeah, looking forward to having yours up here. And no, honestly, Dave, it was honestly a pleasure meeting you. Definitely looking forward to learning more from you. And with saying that, I think the last question I'll ask is, what are your thoughts on the next few years? We got the 2026 World Cup coming up, the 2028 Olympics in LA, and potentially a 2031 Women's World Cup in the US. Um, what does this look like? What are your thoughts on it? And what does this look like for your club?
Um, yeah, I think, it's an amazing opportunity. The timing, I think, is right. It's it's also, a real honor to be part of this incoming class of clubs, with the league growing by 50% in 1 year. So yeah, I think really the key word here is opportunity. There's an opportunity to really make inroads with this sport in this country. It's been something that's been talked about for decades, but I think we're at a point now where we could really make a meaningful impact on sort of the fan base in this country for all the reasons you just listed. And then in particular, for our fans, I think, all those things you just mentioned just makes being a fan of the game so exciting right now. And so I think it's our responsibility to, one, represent this community as we travel around the country, playing games, represent them the way they want to be represented, and then really focus on giving people the best possible game day experience. And we're certainly not doing that, in a bubble. We're looking at what's working in other markets, but then also being very cognizant of the fact that we're unique, and we can bring some Oregon uniqueness to what we offer our fans, but also not try to reinvent the wheel and replicate what's working in other markets, and certainly leaning on the league as well for a lot of help. I think when it comes to pro rel and potential media deals and all these things, the league has done a really good job recently of hiring really really good people, and they need to make sure that they're guiding things in the right way. I think pro rel is one thing that people are talking about a lot, but I think the thing to keep our eyes on in the coming years, especially after the World Cup and all the attention the sport is getting, is what are these media deals going to look like? I think that's going to be a key piece, and the league is going to be instrumental in leading the way on that.
Amazing. Well, Dave, once again, I truly appreciate you taking the time for being on the One Soccer Nation podcast.
Thank you, Kareem. Great to be here.